Hi, everyone. I'm Karen MacNeil, author of the Wine Bible and editor of the digital newsletter Wine Speed. And this is episode 3 of the Champagne Life. Thank you for being here. We're so glad you're here. And of course, tonight we're going to have a fun night and take lots of your questions. So let them roll through the chat and we'll take as many as we possibly can. Tonight, we're going to discuss something that's obviously appropriate for this time of year, which is giving champagne as a gift. Now, you'd think that there would be nothing to say, right? I mean, because champagne is, of course, a great gift. But we've got some questions. Who specifically should you gift champagne to? Your significant other, your doctor, your boss? Can you bring champagne to a holiday dinner and expect the host to open it? What are the best champagnes to give? What styles make the most sense? And then if you're going to gift champagne, what might you gift along with it? What would be some great accessories to go along? So we'll be answering these questions and hopefully yours too. Let me tell you who is joining me tonight. I'm so excited to have her. Alexa Jaenicke. I hope you can jump on now. I know she's there in the background. Here she comes on. There you are. Alexa, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Alexa is a representative for Prestige Ledroit, a sales rep, who is a distributor of fine artisanal wines based in Washington, D.C. Her background as a sommelier, and actually before that, her background in art, I think, helped foster her love of champagne. So welcome, Alexis. So glad to have you. So let's start out with asking the obvious question. I mean, it seems obvious, but why do you think champagne is such a great gift?
Well, champagne is meant to be enjoyed, and it is absolutely delicious, of course, and it has such a rich history of being a celebration. In addition to kind of those things that we normally think about when we're talking about gifting for champagne, I feel like there are just so many extra layers. First of all, especially with these smaller producers, as we'll get in with some of the wines, there's such a rich history that gets attached to it. So often you're not only just gifting something that's delicious, there's a story that goes along with the champagne. There's also usually a story of why I'm gifting this specific champagne to someone else. That something about the champagne reminded me of them, something about the history of the grower reminded me of this person. And just like other wines, but I feel like specifically with champagne, there's something that's just so very personal about it, which just gives it a little bit more of an oomph in its celebration.
Such an important point that you've just made. We decided to put up on Instagram and Facebook a bit of a poll for people asking if there was anyone you would not give a gift of it. We said for wine, just in general for that poll. Yeah. But someone made the interesting point that you just made, which is that it's very personal and that you should give a gift of wine, a gift of champagne is in a sense a gift of respect and love and value. And so this person said the only person who I would not gift a great wine to or a great champagne to is someone who I didn't like, someone who maybe I knew, but I didn't have a personal relationship with.
That kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. I also think, to jump on to what you were saying, I think that, some wines you can give to connoisseurs, but the person needs to be a connoisseur. I was thinking about this the other day, thinking like, if you gave something like Clos Erasmus to someone, they would have to kind of know that this is a very special and rare wine, that it's from the Priorat, that the Priorat is in Spain, that the wine is made mostly from Grenache. You'd really need to know a lot. But I think champagne is one of those wine gifts that you could give to a connoisseur who would, their eyes would light up, hopefully, and in anticipation of all that deliciousness. But you could also give it to someone who was just beginning their wine journey, and they would understand that it's about how much you valued them to give them this beautiful gift, but you didn't necessarily presuppose an enormous amount of wine knowledge at the same time.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we can start talking about vintage versus non-vintage. With non-vintage, it's meant to be enjoyed right then and there. Well, if you bring the bottle cold, I feel like it should be opened at the party. But with vintage champagnes, you can lay them down. Of course, you can enjoy them soon, but they have this age potential that non-vintage doesn't have. And so I feel like if you pick between those two categories, you're starting to have maybe that different tier of who you're giving it to. So you're giving it to someone who will maybe want to age it and will kind of explore aging champagne, which for so many people can be something that's new, something new to try out.
Yeah. Let me pick up on something you just said there, because it's that dinner party question, right? If you brought a gift to a holiday dinner party and the gift was a bottle of champagne, should you bring it chilled, right? Should you sort of imply that you're hoping that the host will open it? I think my own sort of manners take on this is that you should bring two bottles. One that is chilled, that sort of says, okay, let's open this right now. It's the holidays. We've all been stuck inside far too long without all the people and friends that we love. Mm-hmm. But the other bottle, when you walk in the door, you say, this one's for you, to put away and have some other time. And this one, let's open right now. What's your take on that?
I really like that. I often like to bring, again, a small present that's just for the host and something for the party. I think that's where, when we talk about large formats are so much fun to have at holiday parties, the engagements, and so that it's not only a gift for the party, but your host can look really wonderful while they're doing that as well. You're showing them off a little bit by having some really beautiful bottles kind of display.
Yeah, gosh. Large bottles are great for a party, and you kind of need someone big in the room to get those corks out too, because they are not always easy. We're going to talk later about accessories, but I just wrote down, you reminded me that another great accessory is a saber. Yes. Don't try this at home unless you look on YouTube and really learn how to saber correctly. So, we've just got a really great comment from Janet saying, but you also want to be careful to not show up the host or hostess. They may have other ideas. Yeah, that's a really good point, Janet. I think there's a way to handle it verbally, though, to say, we can open this now if you want to, it's cold, or just put it in your refrigerator and you have it tomorrow. And then this one that's not chilled is for your cellar or something like that. Yeah, being so sensitive as a guest. Good point. Yeah, right. I know. It would be hard for me because I'm such a champagne lover. I'd be like, let's open this right now. I'm ready. But that would probably not be the thing to do. All right. Let's talk about types of champagne, because Alexa, you just referenced that idea that, you could give a non-vintage Brut, something that's really meant to be drunk right now. You could give a Blanc de Blanc, you could give a Rosé, you could give a Prestige Cuvée, which has, 10 years or more ahead of it in terms of aging. So what do you do in that case? You think about the person you're giving it to.
Absolutely. And of course, the circumstance. If we're having just cocktails and little snacks, doing a non-vintage, maybe I do a younger or a cooler vintage of a Blanc de Blanc vintage, a beautiful rosé as well. Maybe a non-vintage rosé usually makes a lot of people very happy for sitting down and having something a little more savory, that's where I feel like I can get a little bit more wild with the champagne. I can go into our Blanc de Noir, something a little bit savory, maybe something that has a late disgorgement as well to give that much richer texture. And of course, just going right into those prestige cuvées, something that has not only the lees aging and the depth and the speciality from that producer, but something that can carry the weight of that dinner as well. And, we can get into nitty gritties of pairings, but the best part about champagne is that it's so flexible to bring for dinner. You can go a little bit crazy and pick something a little bit funkier, and it's still going to go well with the food.
Yeah. And for anyone who's listening and thinking, oh, wait a minute, woof, that's a lot of choices. I guess the most important thing to know is that you can't go wrong. You really can almost not go wrong. I mean, champagne has a standard of quality that even for you and me, people who sort of live in the world of wine all the time and love drinking champagne, I would welcome any champagne that anyone ever gave to me, because it's virtually impossible to go wrong. But your comment about rosé and food makes me think that I have in the past, if I know the person is a good cook, I tend to give them a bottle of rosé, because rosé, it's not always the case, as we know, but often rosés, have real gravitas. They're rich and full bodied. They go with everything from, cheese to, I don't know, sauteed duck breasts or something. So they have a huge range of food possibilities. And for anyone who's a cook, that's a really fun gift.
Absolutely. So since we were just coming from Thanksgiving, I absolutely love doing those rosés and Blanc de Noirs, honing in on Pinot Noir for those more savory, richer dishes that kind of comes along with Thanksgiving. And I love a beautiful rosé. I love a rich, savory style of rosé. But I don't know. I love all champagnes. It's hard to pick just one that I love.
I know. Sam, who has joined us many times on Taste with Karen Live, is just written in about, can we assume that in addition to champagne, you might include sparkling wines from California, Franciacorta from Italy. Maybe. I mean, tonight we're going to talk about champagne, and in part because I think, saying nothing bad about California sparkling wine or Franciacorta for that matter from Italy, I don't know. I think of when you're gifting, I think a gift of champagne has still that special ribbon around it somehow, because perhaps, as Alexa said earlier, it originally was a wine so strongly associated with celebration. So let's talk about, for a minute, the idea of houses, co-ops, and growers, because we've been mentioning that, you could have a non-vintage Brut, you could do a Blanc de Blanc, meaning all from Chardonnay, you could do a rosé, you could do a prestige Cuvée, every firm's top of the line wine. But I think it's important to point out too that in terms of brands, right, you could choose a well-known brand, as they're called in Champagne, a house, Veuve Clicquot, Bollinger, Paul Roger, which we're going to try in a minute. You could do a cooperative. Nicolas Foyat, one of the most successful wine brands in the US and in France, is a wonderful co-op. You could do a grower champagne. And these are names that I think most of us don't know when we see grower champagnes, but I almost feel like, wow, if I don't know that name, I want to taste that wine.
Absolutely. So growers have always been at the center of my heart when it comes to champagne. Owning all the land that they are going to be sourcing their grapes from and going to make everything on the estate, seeing something from beginning to end, you are not only ensuring quality, but you know that it's going to be in the exact style that the winemaker has always intended. They tend to over deliver on their value. Absolutely. One of my favorite things when I was working in a wine shop a while back was to always recommend Special Club, a special collective of growers, where not only is it a really beautiful celebratory bottle, but even if it was a producer that the consumer didn't know, the guest didn't know, something about that label saying it was part of Special Club, you knew that there was something that was going to be really beautiful and special about that bottle.
Yeah, a really nice point. And I'm thinking about my own kind of gift-giving proclivities of bringing two. Something that I've often done is bring a well-known house, you know, a Moet or a Tattinger or a Bollinger or a Veuve Clicquot or Krug, and bring a grower and kind of explain those differences, or not. I just open them both and enjoy them. All right, so let's taste some wine. This is like enough delayed gratification, right? So we have two, I have two prestige cuvées. I think you have a prestige cuvée and then an add-on, which we'll talk about in a minute. But here we're going to start with the Michel Gonnet, and I want to hold this up to the camera. Gonnet is a grower, a very old name in Champagne. The house was founded in the 15th century, and they've worked as a Champagne grower since the 1800s. They're mostly Chardonnay, and in fact, this is a Blanc de Blanc Grand Cru. Blanc de Blanc, very easy to remember, right? Because it simply means white from whites. And from one of the 17 Grand Cru villages / vineyards in Champagne. When I hear the term Blanc de Blanc, I'm already excited because I don't know about you, but I love, and I want to hear what you think, Alexa, but I love that starched, limestoney, racy precision that you get in a Blanc de Blanc.
Absolutely. That raciness, especially coming from specifically where this wine is. So we are looking at the Grand Crus of Mézières-sur-Oger, and this really stark limestone that you're talking about coming through in these big chunks in these famous Ludi, these famous small vineyard plots. It's that line of super racy acidity, that's that backbone that gives to all that voluptuous golden fruit. And it's what I love so much about Blanc de Blanc, that you have this duality between richness that somehow is still light on its feet.
Yeah. Oh, and duality. I love that word. I think it's, you know, the word I sometimes use is kind of, or the term is contrapuntal tension. You have, which I think we all find fascinating, because on the one hand, your brain is saying tight, taut, starched. And on the other hand, your brain is saying, but wait, rich, voluptuous. You know, sometimes I describe wines that are like this as being a sword wrapped in whipped cream. And I don't know, maybe that's, you know, being a journalist, you lay awake at night thinking, how am I going to describe this phenomenon? But, and you're drinking the Jaenicke. Hold your bottle up. Show me what
I wonder if it will come out just, it's wonderful. Oh, it's mirrored, but Pierre Jaenicke feeds, so this is going to be small grower as well. This is coming from the Premier Cru of Cuvée, which is just going to be west of Mesnil, from where the Gonnet is from. It is a Premier Cru. It's all going to be mostly north and northeast facing vineyards. So it's known to having a little bit more austerity, a little bit more firmness and crunchiness by compared to some of the Grand Crus nearby it, because it is a little bit of a cooler climate than northern facing. And it certainly is. It's definitely more of those crunchy yellow and green fruits, more of those really bright white flowers, and has a little bit more austerity as well.
Yeah, people are writing in what they're drinking. Ili Uriye, you lucky person. Yum, yum, yum. Tracy is also writing in saying she loves Jaenicke. We do too. And we're going on though. We have 2 bottles open, and Alexa and I both have this next wine, which I'm sorry to say has become so popular that it's pretty expensive these days, but it's the holiday season, and I feel like we all deserve at least one great bottle right about now. This is the Paul Roget, the famous Cuvée Sir Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, former Prime Minister of Great Britain, was an extraordinary champagne lover. And I mean extraordinary, as in cases and cases delivered to 10 Downing Street every week. He reportedly drank a bottle of Paul Roget every day, at least one bottle. I have in my files a Xerox that was sent to me by Paul Roget by the House, of a letter that was in Winston Churchill's files that he used to take when he traveled. And this letter said, in effect, that his doctors had recommended something like sufficient quantities of champagne daily for medicinal purposes. So, that Winston Churchill, he had it really right. And in honor of his great love of Paul Roget, the House named their prestige cuvée Sir Winston Churchill, which is how this wine comes to be named. So let's both give this a try. And I want to hear, you're a somm. I'm not, but I want to hear how you describe this.
So first of all, this wine is gorgeous. It's my first time actually having the 2012 bottling. And it is showing so beautifully. 2012 as a vintage is just noted so highly as being just one of those fantastic vintages. There's always going to be a little bit of trouble in champagne, but 2012 often gets stand up to everything else that's great. But looking at the wine specifically, the nose is just so beautifully pronounced with dried white flowers, and that kind of just like when you just break open a baguette and all those aromas come flying in. It is so beautiful. And then on the palate, that Pinot Noir dominant blend does really come through in a way where I see it as very candied red apples and dried cherries. There's a little bit of kind of dried cocoa powder in the background, but that fine mousse and those really small bubbles that come with the aging and just create this really luscious palate that is long lasting. And it finishes a little bit. It reminds me of when you got ice cream in a waffle cone, and that kind of little bit of sweetness with the fresh cone flavor. It's just really beautiful. It has kind of the sweet and a little bit of that savory tone together. But for me, fantastic champagnes always show themselves in their finish, that it's not harsh, that it's smooth, and it fills the palate evenly.
All right, I'm stealing for attribution. Ice cream in a waffle cone, my friend. That was really good.
I do like it.
What impresses me first, I suppose, is what I think of as the choreography of this wine. Some champagnes, and I confess to loving these ones that are like, come right in, racy, snappy, so alive, and but they're immediate, and the velocity of them is really fast. And then some champagnes, like this Paul Roget Cuvée Sir Winston Churchill, have this incredible choreography. They're like, languorous. They're just pointillistically taking you in this slow arc of flavor. And so they're long at the end, but they're kind of like long through the whole sensory dance of the wine. And of course, in the wine world, there is no word choreography. It's just my made up term for for how wine moves on the palate. But this is so beautiful in that way.
I really like that idea of comparing wine to choreography and to dance, especially with champagne, because there is that added element of the bubbles that really does change that texture and give that that third variable. Really wonderful. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Richness, but starchedness here. Let's talk about, because these are both, because all three of our wines now are such renowned wines. Let's talk about something that you brought up a few minutes ago, Alexa, which is aging. How long would you keep any of these wines? Let's go with the Paul Roger, since we both have that. How long would you tend to keep it? I realize that it's personal, right? I mean, we're drinking this is a current vintage, we're drinking it right now, but it seems to me like it could go for quite a long time. But when do you personally love champagne? How many years?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the texture you're going for. I feel like the Paul Roger right now is tasting fantastically. However, a lot of these types of cuvées really can have a longevity of 20 years. So right now we're kind of at the 10-year mark, and you can see how it's going to be in another 10 years. And I've had older wines from, from the 90s and from the 80s. And of course, the bubbles do fall apart a little bit, but the flavor's still there. And that is actually why I do love gifting magnums, is because the bubbles will retain a lot nicer. I'm trying to think. I had a bottle of 1990 Tanger, the Comète de Champagne from 1990, and the bubbles were still retained because of the larger bottle. You still got the aging just was a little bit different, it was a little bit softer, and you still got more pronounced bubbles. Yeah, with the non-vintage, I think it's not meant to age quite as much, but you can hold it absolutely for maybe 5 years and it'll still be performing really well.
Yeah, I have to admit that I'm on the younger side. I'm not myself on the younger side, but when I was on the younger side, I often aged champagne. I felt a little too long. You know what? The truth is that I put it in my little refrigerator, saving it for the day when the right guy came along. And then one day I said, you know what? Mr. Right is not arriving in enough time. Damn it, I'm going to open these bottles. And some of them had been aged a little too long. Yeah. And after that, I thought, okay, forget it. No more Mr. Right and no more waiting. I really love champagne when there is a Mr. Right now, but I love still champagne when it's fresh and lively and super snappy. But, I want to ask you a question that's coming in from Jeremy right now, Alexa, because this is a great question. This is a very thoughtful question. Do you find that aging, that is the longevity of the wine, differs between Blanc de Blanc and Blanc de Noir?
Absolutely. Not necessarily about the longevity as much, but definitely about how they age differently. Blanc de Blancs, especially if they're going to be Chardonnay, folks are going to get more of those candied and dried orchard fruits, develop more of those nutty tones as that Chardonnay starts to oxidize. Pinot Noir tends to get a little bit more savory, getting a little bit more of those savory tones in bay leaf and mocha, dried chocolate covered cherries as it ages, and they kind of diverge in those two directions. And then Petit Meunier, which we haven't really talked about too much today, what I like so much about it is that it doesn't age in the same trajectory typically as Pinot Noir or Chardonnay. It's a little bit more stable in terms of delivering freshness over the years. So when you're looking at those two, they age, as far as I know, they probably age a little bit differently. I mean, when we're looking at more of the scientific and molecular level, but in terms of flavor profile, that's kind of where I see those two different wines kind of diverging in their flavor profiles.
Yeah, we should also point out that there isn't a lot of Blanc de Noir made in Champagne. Historically, the Champenois felt that if you wanted to make a white wine from white grapes only, from Chardonnay, okay, there you go, Blanc de Blanc. If you wanted to have if you wanted to use primarily Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier, then make a rosé. I mean, why a Blanc de Noir? So there are actually many more Blanc de Noir made in California, for example, than there are today in Champagne. Still, you can find them. So it's a very thoughtful question, Jeremy. And our suggestion, I'm sure, is going to be to you to get a bottle of each, put it away for 5 to 10 years, and then tell us what you think. That would be good. Let's talk about accessories, because you mentioned earlier, Alexa, that you like to bring a gift, a bottle of wine, and a little something extra. And the things that I cannot live without, and I truly can't live without these, are what we call bouchons, right? These champagne stoppers. I love this one. It's called Clevio, Kloveo. You can buy it right on Amazon. They're about $20 a piece. And a Clevio bouchon or champagne stopper will keep a bottle of champagne fresh for a week, lest if you are the only one in your family who opens a bottle of champagne, you needn't worry that you're being extravagant, because you can make that bottle of champagne last for a good week. Or pliers. Do you have pliers? I definitely have pliers for really hard to open bottles. Glasses. Let's talk about glasses, because hold up your glass again. Let me see the glass you're using.
The glasses that I have, I'm using more of a Burgundy style for the Paul Roger. I like those from what I have available at home. For these kind of richer wines that have these big bouquets that have a little bit more age. For the Gimonnet, I have a little bit more of a straighter glass because it's a little bit fresher. I unfortunately at home do not have the incredible, beautiful champagne glasses like you do, Karen. But at the restaurant that I was working at, helped opened up in DC, which was a champagne bar, which is amazing. If you're in DC, please visit Apéro. It is an incredible collection. But we use actually what was classified as a Riesling glass. But for a champagne bar that needs to have lots of perfect champagne glasses, we had to do a little bit more research of what we could find that was within a budget for a restaurant, because we do break some. But yeah. Schwarzweißel does an amazing Riesling glass that's actually really well suited for champagne at a reasonable price point.
Yeah, I mean, I think, what you're pointing out is that a glass that is good for a high acid white, Riesling, champagne, many Sauvignon Blancs, often works well across that whole profile of wines that take some of their charm and structure from acidity. I'm using these are, shameless commerce division here. These are my own glasses called Flavor First. And they do what you're saying a little bit. There's enough roundness here in the center of the glass that you can smell the wine, because obviously champagne is wine. And sometimes in those tight, narrow flutes, you can't swirl. And if you can't swirl, it's pretty hard to smell.
Absolutely. I mean, aroma is so much of champagne, especially with those bubbles. And each of those bubbles, when they burst, just has so much aroma. Why would you want to lose that in a narrow flute or a very wide coupe, which, I still see, some of my friends serving the coupes, which is a lot of fun, for a party. But when we're seriously trying to smell and enjoy a champagne, not as helpful.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean. Those coupes, which are the wide, bold glasses from, you see them in 1940s old movies and things like that. They were wildly popular in the 1920s. And before that, reportedly molded on the left breast of Marie Antoinette. And why the left? Because it was closer to her heart. She put her wedding ring on her left hand too. But unless you are planning on molding the family glassware, you really do not want to use these coupes except for parfaits. Ice cream, they're terrific for ice cream and sherbet, right? And by the way, we have more comments coming in on glasses. Thank you, Sam. You're such a wonderful guy. I appreciate that. He's saying he loves these Flavor First glasses. And Tracy's saying, I save my coupe glasses for martinis. There's an idea. Okay, fabulous. Janet is saying, back to accessories, my favorite is something I discovered in Germany, a kind of claw-shaped thing that helps you grip the cork. I know exactly what you mean. And I have one of those too. It is a kind of big claw that you turn. I find pliers, though, are even easier than that. And every now and then you get not usually in an aged wine because the cork has been in the bottle a long time, but often with a recently bottled non-vintage Brut, say, you can have a cork that's really tight. And what you don't want to do, in fact, let me make this a safety message here, because I've seen people do this. Here's the worst possible thing you could do is insert a cork screw into a champagne cork. Do not do, never do, very dangerous to do. So it's really helpful to have a pair of these pliers. They're called champagne pliers. Again, you can go on Amazon and find them for $22 or so. My favorite is from a company called Vacuvin, Vacuvin, but it makes opening those occasional difficult bottles, which for me, I drink a glass of champagne every single night. And maybe 3 times a year, I will get a bottle that I think is too difficult to open, or maybe I just haven't worked out enough to get it open. So lastly, though, we cannot leave the discussion of accessories without thinking about a saber. How often have you sabered, my friend?
Oh, just once.
Oh, you've got to
I know it's not even that many. However, I think it is so special when you saber for someone, when someone sabers for you. It's kind of like we're talking about choreography. It's definitely like a little bit of a dance and something, and it's a very special moment. And so I love sabering. Definitely do it outdoors. Definitely look up a YouTube video, but you can do it with anything from just a regular butter knife into a special sword. And I did do it with a throwing axe, was my very dramatic experience. Outdoors.
All right, that is pretty dramatic. A saber, if it's a new word, for some of our listeners, it looks like a giant long sword. It is big. It's maybe 2 feet long, or at least 1.5 feet. No, about 2 feet long. And you can look up on YouTube how to saber. Here in the Napa Valley where I live, we have a wonderful guy who comes around and teaches people to saber. You have to be very careful. You have to wear gloves, and he also wears a hat, a kind of dramatic French cavalry hat. You don't have to wear a hat, but you do have to wear gloves. But it's super fun to do if you learn to do it properly. And if you have a friend who loves champagne, a few years ago, I gave my husband a saber that was engraved, and the blade is long enough that you really can write a whole sentence. So it's a wonderful, wonderful gift. The very famous steak knives, French cutlery firm Laguiole, which is Laguiole, Laguiole, sells Laguiole sabers. So you can buy one, take it to your local engraver, and it's a dramatic gift with a bottle of champagne to saber alongside. Of course, the one bad thing about sabering is once you saber, there's no putting a bouchon back in. You have to drink the whole bottle, right? So if you're by yourself, just know you are going to be drinking that whole bottle. All right. A few last words. Do you have a person this holiday season who you plan to give a bottle of champagne to, Alexa?
Yes. So I, of course, have some incredibly close, wonderful friends, other fellow sommeliers that I can go a little bit nerdier into my choices and pick out really something fun for them. The one thing I'm so happy about living in DC is the community of sommeliers that are so close and so supportive that it's easy to make really wonderful friends and mentors. So I will definitely be gifting a little bit of champagne to them as well.
Well, it's beautiful, and I'm sure everyone's eyes will light up when you do. You know, champagne is such in a sense, it's a punctuation mark, right? It says the moment is now. Here we are. This is to feel so wonderful about the world. It's just it's a remarkable thing that a wine that is so accessible to us right there, waiting to be purchased and drunk, can do that. Well, I will be gifting some champagnes myself. I'm going to be thinking about the personalities of each of those people, and then thinking, like, who's bold and a cook, and who's racy and light and snowflake-like, who I'm going to give a Blanc de Blanc to. But I'm glad we both will. So for us, we've come to the end of this episode 3. Alexa, thank you so much for being with me tonight.
Thank you, Karen. This is awesome.
Absolutely. And I want to thank everyone who has joined us tonight. And I know many of you have joined us for other Taste with Karen lives, and I'm so grateful for that. I want to wish all of you an extremely fantastic holiday season. I hope it is filled with many great glasses of champagne. So, Alexa, a toast to you and a toast to everyone who's joining us tonight.
Yes,
thanks.
cheers.